Every empire swears its money is safe. Every government claims its promises will last forever. And every time, history proves them wrong. From Rome to France, from the Confederacy to modern Lebanon, people have woken up to find their savings worthless, their salaries meaningless, and their futures taken by systems they thought were solid. Collapse is not an extreme event. Collapse is an unwritten rule. The real question is not whether financial systems will collapse. The real question is how you will protect yourself when they do. The illusion of permanence is the most dangerous financial mistake. When we look at our bank accounts and national currencies, we assume they stand on a solid foundation. But money is not a foundation, it is trust. And trust can disappear the morning you wake up. That is why history is both ruthless and useful. Every collapse leaves behind lessons, patterns, and warnings. It shows what truly protects wealth and what turns to dust. And if you pay attention, you will see that the people who survived these disasters were not the ones who trusted the most. They were the first to doubt and question. Consider the Byzantine Empire. It is often remembered as the eastern half of Rome that survived for another 1,000 years after the western part collapsed. At the center of its economy was the gold solidus. This coin was so trusted that merchants across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia accepted it without hesitation. For centuries, it was the closest thing the medieval world had to a global reserve currency. But here is the part loyal viewers might find interesting. You would think they learned their lesson from the disaster Rome experienced earlier with the silver denarius. Emperors kept debasing it until it became little more than silver-plated tin. We have told that story before, but no. Centuries later, the Byzantines made the same mistake with gold. They began reducing its purity. They minted it thinner. They mixed it with cheaper metals. At first no one noticed, then trust broke. The money that formed the backbone of Mediterranean trade became little more than a political fiction. Debasing the currency destroyed trust in it, and the Byzantine economy lost the stability it once had. So what remained solid? Not paper promises, not government decisions, merchants who secretly accumulated real gold, or land outside imperial control, preserved their wealth. Everyone else watched their money evaporate. The first lesson is timeless. Governments cannot resist the temptation to debase money, and when they do, real value flows into assets that cannot be easily replicated. But not every collapse comes from rulers manipulating money. Sometimes it comes from unexpected shocks. In the mid-14th century, Europe was struck by the most catastrophic plague in its history, the Black Death. Between 1347 and 1351, nearly half of Europe's population died. Cities emptied, villages vanished, and trade routes collapsed. But the economic story of the plague is not only disaster. When half the workforce disappears, labor becomes valuable. Survivors can demand higher wages. Food and land suddenly become abundant relative to people. Families with liquidity, silver, goods, or simply the ability to work, gained bargaining power they had never imagined. Land that once held immense value could suddenly be bought cheaply. Houses were abandoned, fields were unplanted. The survivors were in a buyer's market. If this sounds familiar, there is a reason. We saw a modern version during the COVID pandemic. Supply chains broke. Governments printed trillions to keep the system alive. Those with liquidity bought assets, while people living on wages fell behind. Housing prices in the United States surged. The stock market recovered quickly. Yet millions struggled to pay rent. History rhymes. Pandemics redistribute wealth. They always have. Survivors of the Black Death climbed the social ladder by using scarcity. After COVID, those with liquidity bought houses, stocks, and businesses others could not hold on to. The lesson is uncomfortable, but real. Crises reward those with reserves and punish those without. The banking collapse of Renaissance Florence shows another lesson. Institutions that appear too big to fail can fall like dominoes. In the 1340s, Florence was the financial center of Europe. It was home to powerful banking families such as the Bardi and the Peruzzi. These banks had lent enormous sums to King Edward III of England. When Edward could not repay his debts during his wars with France, the banks suddenly collapsed. Depositors were ruined. Trade stalled. Florence faced a massive crisis. People learned something important. There is no such thing as too big to fail. Institutions exist to make profit, not to guarantee your survival. This lesson repeats in every century, from Florence to Lehman Brothers in 2008 to Lebanese banks that froze accounts in 2019. The American Civil War was also a financial war. Both the North and the South printed money to finance the conflict. The North issued paper money called greenbacks. But the more they printed, the more its value declined. The South fared even worse. The Confederacy printed graybacks, sending inflation soaring. By the end of the war, prices had increased thousands of times. Salaries could not even buy bread. By 1865, Confederate money was completely dead. What preserved value was not paper, but real assets, land, food, gold. The same thing happened during the French Revolution. Paper money called assignats was issued, supposedly backed by church lands. But when the government printed too much, the currency collapsed. Farmers refused to accept paper. They demanded silver or goods in exchange for food. The result was inflation, unrest, and economic collapse. A similar lesson appeared during the Asian financial crisis of 1997. Thailand and other countries had borrowed heavily in dollars. When their currencies collapsed, those debts became impossible to repay. Unemployment rose and economies shrank. Those holding dollars or foreign assets were in a far better position. Borrowing in someone else's currency is a death trap. When the storm arrives, it is not the creditor who sinks. It is the debtor. And this is not just history. In Lebanon between 2019 and 2021, banks closed their doors. People discovered their accounts had been frozen. The Lebanese pound lost 90% of its value. Lifetimes of savings vanished. It revealed a painful truth. Money in a bank is not a treasure. It is a loan you give to an institution, and in a crisis, that institution may decide not to repay it. History shows there is no single way to protect yourself, but there are patterns. Gold in Byzantium. Liquidity after the plague. Not blindly trusting banks in Florence. Tangible goods in the Confederacy. Food and land in revolutionary France. Avoiding foreign currency debt in Asia. Withdrawing money before banks close in Lebanon. The common theme is the same. Not blind trust, but real value. And here is the paradox. Collapse is both disaster and opportunity. For the unprepared, it is destruction. For the prepared, it is a chance to buy assets at far lower prices. But wealth is not only what you own, it is what you can produce. Throughout history, those who rose were not just people who owned gold or land. They were also people who could produce. The baker who makes bread, the craftsman who repairs tools, the farmer who feeds society, the merchant who moves goods. In crises, money can lose meaning, but production never does. People still need to eat, build, and trade. Those who meet these needs rarely stay poor for long. This is the real protection. Real assets, real skills, and awareness that systems are fragile. Every crisis is a transfer of wealth, from the unprepared majority to the prepared minority, from promises written on paper to tangible value. History has shown this again and again, so the question is not, will everything collapse? Because eventually it does. The real question is, will you hold only promises or something of real value? History does not repeat itself exactly, but if you ignore it, it will never show you mercy.